It wasn't as good as Chicken Run. Normally I don't condone drinking and driving, and I usually don't, drink alcohol in video game reviews, but why are all the terrible Dreamcast games racing games? Why? The list today we have Spirit of Speed 1937. I would read the manual for you, but for some reason the copy I got didn't actually have a manual. It just had the front cover ripped off. I thought it had a manual, but it didn't. Probably for the best, because the manual was probably going to be terrible too. So, if you know anything about video games, and if you've seen if you've watched YouTube video game reviews, you're probably aware of James Rolfe, or his better known character, the Angry Video Game Nerd. Now, why am I bringing him up? He usually covers like Nintendo games and stuff. Well, his least favorite company is LJN, who by the year 2000 actually didn't exist. So why did they publish this game? Because a company that's almost as bad as them didn't want to be on the cover of this game. And other than looking it up online, there's only one way you can tell who actually made this game. From the address of LJN Entertainment, 1 Acclaim Plaza. That's right. This video game is so bad that Acclaim didn't want to be on it. That's right. So what is Spirit of Speed 1937? The case doesn't even work. Well, it's a racing game where you race cars from the 1930s. Because there's such a massive appeal in cars from the 1930s. I can't make that up. Somebody was like, what time period of cars should we have? The 60s with those awesome muscle cars and the highest horsepower power imaginable? No. The 80s with awesome supercars like the Ferrari Testarossa and the Lotus Elise. Actually, I think that was in the 70s, but close enough. No, we'll skip those. Modern supercars? No. Let's go back to the 1930s. It's a bad game with a bad premise by a bad company, though it was actually made by a bad company. The only good thing about it is that it's for the Sega Dreamcast. It appears that, I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera, but it appears that this was on the shelf for so long that, like, the cover is completely faded. Probably because nobody wanted to buy it. I mean, I'm not sure how well you can see it here, but the swirl on the Dreamcast logo, I don't have another Dreamcast game on me at the moment, is like completely faded away. It looks gray. It's always orange. Okay, well, let's get this ancient turd out of the way. Let's take a look at some gameplay footage and look at how terrible it is. Then we'll come back and give it a really bad score, because that's what it deserves. I'm not sure if I want to be quick and decisive on this game, or long and drawn out and tell you about every single one of its flaws. Because, frankly put, it's common knowledge this game is atrocious. But we'll start out at the beginning. First off, Acclaim did a really good job hiding the fact that they actually made this game. But past that, the menu is the presentation is okay. The fact that the options are non-existent is strange. I mean, you don't even get to change how many laps each race is. And there's no two-player mode, which this is a racing game. Every racing game should have a two-player mode. That's just thing number one. Racing game has to have multiplayer. End of story. It's like a first-person shooter that doesn't have multiplayer. I've seen some of those. Still. It looks pretty bad once you actually start racing. I mean, I don't think it looks quite as bad as Roadsters, but it's still definitely not good. The cars have this unrealistic sheen on them, as if the flash was going off when they were photographed. And it's pretty obvious that all the background is just 2D sprites. The sound is at best. The music is kind of interesting. It's kind of jazzy and all, but still, you really don't hear it during the gameplay. All you hear is just okay, or you hear the actual engine noises. Whatever. There's a fair amount of tracks and stuff that are available in the game, more than Roadsters. I'm gonna keep comparing this to Roadsters because those are the puke and crap of the Dreamcast library. So yeah, that's a great description. Which is worse, puke or crap? I mean, it's just kind of bad in a boring sense. It's not funny bad, like something like, say, Superman 64, or Big Rigs Over the Road Racing. What is it with bad racing games? But it's still not worth purchasing, or owning, or playing. This will probably never be played again. My copy of it will never be played again. Okay, as I said, there's not really much to say about it. It's just bad all across the board. I mean, there's a handful of modes, there's a few scenarios which would be interesting if it were fun to drive. The driving mechanics are slightly better than Roadsters, but that's not really a compliment. I mean, you can theoretically turn, which is as I said, better than Roadsters is, but still that's not really saying a great deal here. I mean, that's like saying that I successfully got out of bed this morning. Just saying. The fact that you can't change how many laps there are in a race is really strange. I mean, for the scenarios, obviously, but in a single race or a quick race, which are two separate modes, but I have no idea what the difference is, you can't change anything. If you start a championship, you can't change which car you drive. In the scenario, obviously, you can't change which car you drive, which is fine. But in a championship, you can't change which car you drive? What's up with that? And the cars all handle really differently. Some of them actually handle relatively well. Some of them just are atrocious. It's absurd. I really couldn't bring myself to finish most of the races. Because it was just, terrible. So, as I said before, comparing this to right now the gold standard of shit, I think it falls slightly below that in terms of terribleness. Is that a good thing? Sort of, but it's definitely not a good game. It's not a game you want to play. Even if you're a massive fan of 1937 cars, there's still no reason to want to play this game. Gran Turismo might have some of these cars. I'm not sure, actually. I mean, yeah, there's none of the tracks in there, but that's whatever. That's fine. It doesn't matter. It's just not good. And then there was this one weird time where I couldn't get my car to go over 20 miles an hour. It didn't say anything. It just... the car kept trying to go into second gear and wouldn't, and I have no idea what happened. It's weird and strange and bizarre. That's why I ended up turning off that race. But I mean, it's just not a fun game to play, and you don't want to play it. And you have so many better options on the Dreamcast and on many other systems that there's no reason to play this one whatsoever. Okay, so now that I've begrudgingly played too much of this game, let's go back and let's take a look at some final thoughts and look at the score, which, as I spoiled for you earlier, will not be very good. So, as we've seen, Spirit of Speed 1937, and the not manual is falling out, is an atrocious video game. Just atrocious. However, I still don't think it's as bad as Roadsters. It looks ugly, has a bad premise, the options are a joke, really. And it's just lacking in so many ways. I mean, if you're looking for a Dreamcast racing game, I have real legitimate suggestions for you. Get Metropolis Street Racer. That's a great game. It spawned the Project Gotham Racing series, which unfortunately seems to be dead now. Speed Devils is actually a pretty fun game. Daytona USA 2001, or just Daytona USA in the States. Those are great games. I've heard really good things about the Tokyo Extreme Racer games. I haven't played them yet. Even Sega GT is alright. I still am not hugely impressed with it, but it's good. It's a lot better than this. It's a lot better than Roadsters. I will say in this one I didn't hit any cows. I want to get that on a t-shirt, like an exploded cow. That's completely beside the point. It's the closest thing I've cracked to a smile in this whole review. So, yes. This is not a good game. If you want... There's really as I said, I'll say in my Chicken Run. I said in my Chicken Run review who would want to buy this. I'll say who wants to buy this game. Two groups of people. One, people who were going for a complete Dreamcast collection, and this was only released on the Dreamcast, so that's why I have it. Two, people who want to play really crappy games, mainly for being on YouTube. Which actually, this is why I'm making the video, and because someone requested it. It was, well, someone on the Dreamcast Talk forum suggested it, that I review it. So it's his fault that this review is here. The game is due to Acclaim, who was so embarrassed by it that they were like, yeah, let's take another company whose name we bought out and put them on the cover instead. Because Acclaim didn't want to be on this. The company that made BMX XXX and Legends of Wrestling, and let's see, what other terrible games did Acclaim come up with? It came out with a lot, especially during the later 6th generation. The company that made those types of games thought this was below them. That really should just be my entire review. But people like numbers, so that's why all of those things together. And the only reason that this doesn't get a 1 is because it is slightly better than Roadsters. And I can't give it like a 1.5 out of 10, so it gets a 2 out of 10. I swear, whatever I review next has to be better. It probably will be better. I'm going to treat myself to a good game. I don't know which game it will be that I review, but it will be an actual good game that I enjoy. Until then, well, this review was bad. This game was bad. No, the review was nowhere near as bad, I'd hope. Until then, we'll see you on next time on Last Call Games. But if you want to do something good, you can support my Beardathon charity, which goes to the Chicago Blackhawks charities. And the link will be in the description below. You can support the beard, which hopefully still has another month or so left in it. But until then, I'll see you guys next time on Last Call Games. I swear it'll be something better than that first chicken coop, which you're very rarely near. You can't just save through the menu, because that would just be too easy.